The Jacobsons seemed to have it all. Neil was a successful doctor. Frankie, his beautiful wife, stayed home with their adorable twin babies. They lived in a lovely home. Life was good. Their happiness seemed to radiate outward. Friends and family admired them. They were the epitome of the American dream. Neil and Frankie met in a chance encounter. Their connection was instant. He was captivated by her beauty. She was drawn to his ambition and charm. Their courtship was a whirlwind of romance. They married in a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by loved ones. The arrival of their twins solidified their happiness. They were living a charmed life. Their story was like something out of a fairy tale. But fairy tales often mask darker truths. And the Jacobson family story was no exception. Beneath the surface of their perfect life, a storm was brewing. The darkness would soon explode, shattering their idyllic existence. Neil and Frankie decided to relocate from the Midwest to Florida. Neil had received a promising job offer. It was an opportunity he couldn't refuse. It promised a better life for him and his family. Florida, with its sunshine and beaches, seemed like the perfect place to raise their children. They packed their belongings. They said goodbye to their old lives. They were excited to start fresh in the Sunshine State. At first, the move was everything they had hoped for. They settled into a beautiful new home. The children thrived in the warm climate. Neil's career flourished. He was respected by his colleagues. His patients adored him. Frankie, ever the devoted mother, poured her heart into raising their twins. Life was good, very good. But the transition wasn't without its challenges. The cost of living in Florida was higher than they anticipated. Neil felt the pressure to maintain their lifestyle. He worked long hours. He was often away from home. Frankie, used to having him around, struggled with the isolation. The strain began to show. As time went on, the cracks in the Jacobsons' marriage began to widen. Neil's demanding work schedule took a toll. He was exhausted. He became increasingly withdrawn. Frankie felt neglected. She missed their connection. They argued more frequently. Resentment simmered beneath the surface. The financial strain also weighed heavily on Neil. He felt the pressure to provide for his family. He made a few risky investments, hoping to ease the burden. But the investments soured. Their financial situation worsened. The stress became almost unbearable for Neil. He couldn't confide in Frankie. He didn't want to worry her. He felt trapped. Desperate for relief, Neil turned to prescription drugs. What began as an attempt to manage his anxiety quickly spiraled into an addiction. His behavior became erratic. He was no longer the man Frankie had fallen in love with. Fear and uncertainty cast a shadow over their once bright lives. Section 4. The Descent into Darkness. Neil's mental state deteriorated rapidly. His addiction consumed him. He was a prisoner in his own mind. He lost a significant amount of weight. His eyes were vacant. His once charming smile was gone. He was a shell of his former self. Frankie, terrified by the changes in her husband, tried to get him help. She begged him to see a doctor. She contacted his family. She reached out to their friends. But her efforts were met with resistance. Neil denied anything was wrong. He pushed her away. He retreated further into himself, lost in a haze of despair and addiction. The once unbreakable bond between them was shattered. Fear and paranoia gnawed at Neil's mind. He became convinced that Frankie was plotting against him. He believed she wanted to take his children away. His thoughts grew darker. He contemplated the unthinkable. Section 5. An Unthinkable Tragedy. On January 23, 2010, tragedy struck. Neil Jacobson, driven by a darkness no one could have imagined, took the lives of his wife and children. The details, too gruesome to recount, sent shockwaves through their community and beyond. The man who had once been a symbol of success and happiness was now a monster. The news of the murders spread like wildfire. Disbelief and horror gripped those who knew the Jacobsons. How could this have happened? What could have driven a man to commit such a heinous act? The questions were endless, the answers elusive. In the wake of the tragedy, the community struggled to come to terms with the unimaginable. Grief counselors were brought in, support groups were formed, but the scars of that fateful day would forever remain etched in their hearts. Section 6. Searching for answers in the shadow of grief. Neil Jacobson was arrested and charged with the murders of his family. The trial that followed was a media spectacle. The prosecution painted Neil as a callous, calculating killer. They argued that his actions were premeditated, driven by financial pressures, and a desire to escape the consequences of his failing marriage. The defense countered with a narrative of mental illness. They presented Neil as a man tormented by addiction and consumed by paranoia. They argued that he was not in his right mind when he committed the murders, that he was driven by an irresistible impulse fueled by a toxic combination of drugs and mental instability. The jury ultimately found Neil Jacobson guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, but the verdict did little to ease the pain and confusion left behind. The case of the Jacobson family tragedy remains a haunting reminder of the fragility of life. It serves as a stark warning about the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness and the desperate need for compassion and understanding.